Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode. In today's episode, in Team Season Preview 20 out of 32, I was joined by Los Angeles Chargers fan Lee Wakefield as we preview the team's upcoming season. Lee talks about the off-season additions.
It feels like to me that they've made the roster deeper.
Lee also discusses whether quarterback Justin Herbert can answer his big game critics.
So, you've got to get the monkey off your back in terms of winning a playoff game eventually.
And Lee predicts the team's overall record in our win-loss tie segment. Hope you all enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, here for Team Season Preview 19 out of 32. So we're well on over the halfway stage. We're getting there. Each episode per day. We're slowly getting there as we head closer and closer towards the NFL season. And at time of recording, we are just a day away from the season opener in the Hall of Fame game between the Lions and the Chargers. And our team season preview today is the Chargers, and returning to the show is Chargers fan Lee Wakefield. Lee, how are things? How have you been?
Hello, mate. Yeah, very good, thank you. It's almost like you planned this really well for this episode to be on the eve of the Chargers' first game, right? Well done.
It was genuinely not even planned. It sounds bad. I genuinely pay that little attention to preseason. I didn't realise until about a month ago that was the game being played. I had no idea. So it is. Having said that, it is one of the games I do watch in preseason. Is this game because it is the first game back after so long without any NFL action. Now, don't think I'll watch it in full the next morning, but certainly game 40 will be, I think, used on the way to work because whilst in the regular season I'll watch the first half of late games on the way on the bus, and then in the second half on my lunch break, just avoiding the score. I don't have quite the same desire to watch, the whole game, but certainly, certainly a game in 40 would be, my best journey is 45 minutes. That's perfect. I'm guessing you'll be watching a bit of it.
I'll be watching probably the similar sort of vein to you, to be honest. I mean, it is like you say, it's a welcome back to football, isn't it? It's months that were starved for it, throughout the whole summer. And then, it's back and that's great. Obviously, with my team this year, it's obviously a little bit extra, but it's not, it's not the starters. I'm probably like a lot of fans. I don't pay super close attention to preseason games, things like that. You're looking for diamonds in the rough, draft picks, things like that to kind of come to the fore a little bit and maybe show out a little bit, make some plays. But it's not Justin Herbert and the rest of the first team, is it? So, yeah, I'll be paying some close attention, probably, like I say, watching the game in 40, seeing if anyone does make any plays, makes a name for themselves, kind of rise up the depth chart in any sort of way. But then, it's a few weeks until the real stuff kicks off, isn't it? But it does whet the appetite for sure.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, one thing that we will get, I think, from preseason potentially is Trey Lance starting a game for the Chargers, and he is one of many ins and outs of the offseason for the Chargers, and this, including re-signings and free agency. You brought in the likes of Mekhi Becton, Dante Jackson, Trey Lance, Najee Harris, Tia Tart, Mike Williams, although he has since retired in the NFL, so that was a short spell with the team. Tyler Conklin's also through the door. Taylor Heineke, Daquan Jones, Tony Jefferson, Jalen Rieger, and Andre James. And the main outs include the longtime Charger Joey Bosa, as well as Christian Fulton, Josh Palmer, Poona Ford, J.K. Dobbins, Simi Toko, Stone Smart, Easton Stick, and also Chris Rumpf. And in the draft, you took in total 1, 2,
It's a lot of players.
and in the draft, you took 9 players in total, and the top 3 taken were running back Omarion Hampton, 22nd overall, wide receiver Trey Harris, 55th overall, and Jamari Caldwell, 86th overall, as well as Kyle Kennard, DeAndre Lambert-Smith, Aronde Gadsden, Branson Taylor, RJ Mickens, and Trickwoozy Bridges. So, Lee, overall for you, what was your thoughts on your team's off-season?
It's like you say, it's a lot of players coming in and out the door. A definite strategy from the front office to try and cycle through a lot of one-year deals last year, see kind of what hit. The only one that's kind of on the outgoing free agency that it kind of stings a little bit, and the coaching staff free agent, and sorry, they're not the free agent. The front office said really stung was Poona Ford leaving to go to the Rams. He leaves a big hole in the middle of the interior defensive line. We definitely something we need to replace. We tried to do that by bit of a committee with, like of Deshaun Hand, Nick Jones, and then, like you said, the draft pick, Jamari Caldwell in particular in third round. But it's just cycling through a lot of, cheaper deals, trying to, get that compensatory pick formula rolling in the same way that the Ravens did, which is where Joe Hortiz, of course, came from. It feels like to me that they've made the roster deeper, which going back a couple of years, a lot of the, people around the league, fans alike, would say that the Chargers had quite a top-heavy roster with a lot of stars and a lot of scrubs and things like that. Whereas it now it feels kind of inverted from that. It feels like we've got a lot of depth and maybe lacking one or two stars, hoping for maybe a little bit of growth from our draft picks from last year, or a couple of other, like say, hits on this free agents haul that we've had in again cycling through a lot of these one-year deals and short-term deals. It feels like there's some potential for that to happen. It feels like there's some potential for the draft picks to hit as well. There's been some really positive reports out of camp. And then obviously, you're looking for people to step up and kind of take that leap forward, as well as, the cohesion kind of melding together in year two of Jim Harbaugh, year two under the same coordinators, which is really, really important. And moving forward and kind of having that continuity and kind of the scheme, the both offensive and defensive coordinator, Greg Roman and Jesse Minter, were both talking about continuity in their kind of opening pressers after training camp begun, and talking about them not starting from the base, they're starting from football 202 rather than 101, which is really important because we've not seen that too often in the Justin Herbert era. And going back for him personally, all the way back to college, he doesn't really stick with many offensive coordinators, for example, on the Joe Lombardi and now Greg Roman for a very long time. So overall, lots of ins, lots of outs, a deeper roster, and a lot of potential, I think, for the season ahead. But as we'll kind of talk about in the in the few minutes, there's a tougher schedule on the way as well.
Yeah, I mean that is to come, and I don't think it's. I think it could be harder, but I think there's still some really, really tough games in that schedule, and we'll get into that in our win-loss tie section. So moving on to. We've touched really on both Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert. In terms of Justin Herbert, I want to start with him. I mean, it's Jim Harbaugh has probably been it is his first actually good head coach since being a quarterback in the NFL. I mean, Brandon Staley, Anthony Lynn, not exactly a great collection of coaches there. So he sort of had that sort of not get out of jail free card, but certainly you can sort of use that as sort of an excuse if you want to try and defend him. And the season he had in 2024, only threw 3 interceptions. Really good year, albeit in a year where Harbaugh did run the ball as a first approach. But he was solid, didn't really make any mistakes. But then he gets that playoff game against the Texans in the wildcard round, and he threw for more picks in that game than the entire regular season put together. And that is really one thing that he has yet to sort of overcome. And, he has been great in the regular season. He's, put some great numbers. I believe he won Rookie of the Year as well back in the day.
Yeah.
And the one thing he hasn't done is answer his critics in the big games. Now, you can also point at quarterbacks you mentioned in previous shows, the likes of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. But at least they've won playoff games. They've won big games in regular seasons. But Herbert, I don't recall, has won many big games in the regular season, let alone the postseason. You think about constantly losing to the Chiefs. I think the Broncos gave them a shot. I forget who won the game last year between the Broncos and the Chargers late on in the season. I want to say it was the Chargers that won, but I could be wrong on that one. And it just feels like, I think before you could blame it on Lynn, you could blame it on Staley, particularly, you think about Staley and the decision to call that timeout in overtime when, you could have easily just left it there and the Raiders were, from all reports, looking to tie the game. And then you think about a year later, the Jaguars game where Lawrence throws for 4 picks in that first half, and then he goes on and wins the game and Herbert loses that one as well. And whilst you could argue, 31 points allowed, that's probably on the defense. I think if he just scored one touchdown in that second half, that game would have been won. So, yeah, he's yet to really answer that question. He's 0-2 in playoffs. 2 games, I think, certainly, also the one game you mentioned then is the game where they were the favourites to win, certainly at half time. And then the game against the Texans was probably, I was favouring the Chargers because I felt the O-line was too much of an issue for the Texans to overcome. So it has been, despite all his excellence in the regular season with the yards and the stats and the touchdowns and yada, 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 at the same time, he hasn't been great in most big games he's played, both regular season and postseason.
I mean, obviously the playoff defeats have not been great. I think there's been circumstances around that. I think one thing that doesn't get mentioned enough is how injured Herbert was last year. He had injury in training camp to his plantar fascia, didn't really play any football in training camp, gets injured in week 2, gets high ankle sprain, had a bunch of injuries throughout the regular season as well. It does sound like excuses, making, again, going back to the coaching, going back to the O-line, which was horrendous in the Texans game in particular last year. It's one of those things where all 5 offensive linemen just happened to have their worst game of the season after being relatively solid for the majority of the season. Hence why they were able to win a lot of games. There are circumstances around it where, you've got to point the finger at Herbert, though, in terms of he makes the decisions. I don't think all 4 picks were on him. I think maybe only 1, maximum 2 of the 4 against the Texans. The Jags game, I think, is a bit of a freak game, to be honest with you. And, to say his record in big games isn't great. I mean, he's got a lot of fourth quarter comebacks, a lot of game-winning drives. Maybe they're not beating the Chiefs, but that's a team effort. So I think it's a thing where a lot of the online chatter is about like QB wins and things like that. And obviously, you got to get the monkey off your back in terms of winning a playoff game eventually, especially if you want to be talked about as top 5 QB in the league, which I think he is quite easily. But yeah, you do have to kind of satisfy these critics, I guess, which I think we'll do this year. I think it's one of those things where, yes, there's a tougher schedule, maybe an area where he can answer the critics this year is to go get a 10-win season again with a tougher schedule, as we'll see this year. But I also think at the end of the day, it's a team game. He himself has played extremely well, especially in the circumstances with receivers that aren't up to the highest standards. The offensive line isn't up to high standards. The coaching, but like I say, it just at one point that line runs out, doesn't it? And you can only say that for so long, and those excuses kind of run out before you kind of have to say, you're the quarterback, you're getting paid a lot of money, you're the face of the franchise, and you've got to will the team over the line, which I do think he's done in a lot of games, but it's just been a lot to overcome. Yes, there's a lot to answer, but I think it's a lot of online chatter that kind of makes that seem a lot worse than it is as well. But obviously, because obviously, like you say, it's got to be done this year. It's got to get that monkey off his back at some point in the future, and that's no better time to start than this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, I've mentioned this before, but there's been a lot of great quarterbacks that have had these monkeys off their backs. I mean, Peyton Manning was seen for years as a playoff joker.
Yeah.
John Elway was seen for a while as that in his career. Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks talent-wise we've seen in the NFL, but he had a lot of playoff losses, and it's like, well, Philip Rivers. There's been many quarterbacks that have sort of overcome these, and majority of goals. And I think Herbert, it just takes that one playoff win
to
change everything. And obviously it's a tough ask, and you're probably looking at, I think with the kind of situation you're in, you're probably potentially looking at winning the division, but certainly if not, then you certainly will be looking at maybe a 5th, 7th seed. And you think about if you're the 5th seed, especially, you're playing the 4th seed, which is sometimes you get a case where the division winner in one division has less wins than the second place team in a different division. So, for example, if you play the Texans again, for example, like last year, you think about despite how good Stroud is and how good he has been in playoffs, but also regular season, his O-line can't keep playing the way they are and then winning games. So I think, and they almost did make the playoffs as well, to be fair. And I think the division they'll get in, but I don't think they'll get in maybe having a great season necessarily. And I think that O-line, they have made improvements, but that's not a guarantee that's going to necessarily be the difference. So you think about, you play a team like the Chargers, or even you come up against, I don't know, maybe like not the Bills or the Ravens. You could catch a team on an off day, but I think that's your way in. I think if you get to one playoff win, that's progress. First of all, that is progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's not a position anymore where you finish when you're 30, and the kind of quarterback he is, he doesn't really rely on his speed. He could probably play till he's 35, 36. There's no rush necessarily. He can have another 10 years in the league and maybe more. And for me, I think, like with Lamar Jackson, in terms of getting a Super Bowl, Josh Allen, the same thing. It just takes that one win against the Chiefs for those two. It just takes one win in the playoffs for Herbert, and that changes the entire narrative, firstly, around Herbert, and also that could mean, come the year after that, 2028 or 2029 or 2030, a lot more prepared to win playoff games.
This is it. Yeah, I mean, it's just getting that winning feeling in the biggest moments in the playoffs, isn't it? Like we've mentioned, getting that monkey off your back. I mean, he hasn't experienced winning Arrowhead. That'd be a good one to get out of the way. That'd feel like a playoff, atmosphere. Just from that game, obviously you get that opportunity every single year. But yeah, it's just about, like you say, just experiencing that, and then it probably all flows from there. The coaching staff are building a play style and a roster that is going to be suited for playoff football, which will help as well. I mean, Greg Roman said it perfectly last year when he came in. He said, imagine Justin Herbert with a good run game, which obviously they tried to implement last year. Didn't quite have the running backs to do it. Hopefully Marion Hampton and Najee Harris, when he's recovered from his injury, will be able to do that. There's still some question marks over the defensive line, as we've said, even though Mekhi Becton looks pretty good. Can he stay healthy? That's the question. But, if all goes well, and, a lot of things do go wrong in the NFL just because it's the NFL season, it's a grind, it's attrition. If a lot of things go well, then this team is set up for January success, eventually, with like I say, the play style and the quarterback that they have. The defense was really good last year. And, there's as much as defense is volatile, it's very much the same unit under the same coordinator. So there's no reason why it can't be at least good again. Maybe not as great as it was last year when it was potentially a top 5 unit, but it can be good again, good enough. If your offense is really good, then you only need it to be just above average, don't you, on the defensive side of the ball? So it's set up in a nice way, I would say, for it to be successful eventually.
Yeah, and I think one thing that will help massively is coaching. This is where, it comes into play about Jim Harbaugh. I mean, his first year back in the NFL as a head coach, famous for his time at the 49ers, where he took them to the Super Bowl, and then he went to Michigan, won a national championship, and then he's come back to the Chargers and had a good first season. I mean, 11-7 record. It's it's a kind of first year record for a team that's pretty good. A lot of coaches come to teams when they're performing badly and they can't quite get the ball rolling. But Harbaugh, turned his team from a team that was bad enough to fire Brandon Staley to then be a team that's made the playoffs, a tough division, one where 3 teams made it in. And he saw some great seasons. J.K. Dobbins had almost 1,000 yards. His touchdown total was 9 as well. Lad McConkey got involved. He had, in total, looking at the yardage, receiving for Lad McConkey over 1,000, 1,149, 7 touchdowns. Turned Quentin Johnson into a good player, 711 yards, 8 touchdowns. He's turned around. Johnson, the player that was seen as a bust 12 months ago, and certainly one, without listening back properly, one we probably did talk about maybe last season was Quentin Johnson's struggles in the NFL. But he's come to the Chargers, Harbaugh, he's turned him around. Dobbins had a very injury hit year, but he managed to keep him healthy for most of it and had a great year. Obviously, haven't kept him on, but you brought in Najee Harris, who does draw criticism in terms of his kind of running style. But he's had 1,000 yards in all 4 of his years as a pro. The stats don't lie. You don't get 1,000 yards every year through luck. One year maybe you could have an off year, but a one-off year where you're amazing. To have 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, not even a season without 1,000 yards, shows the kind of consistency he has. So you bring him in as well, and the guy that is easily a lot more durable than Dobbins. unfortunately for the Chargers. And it was a brilliant first year. What are you kind of expecting out the second year? Are you expecting a jump, or are you just expecting more of the same? How are you sort of feeling about Jim Harbaugh going into a second season?
I mean, I feel great about Jim. He wins, like we said. You kind of laid it out there. He went to Michigan. Well, just before that, he won at San Diego. He won at Stanford. He won at the 49ers. And there's that quite steady incremental rise in each of these examples. He went to Michigan when they were down and out a little bit. And, Ohio State was dominating that rivalry. And then he flipped the script and obviously went on to win the national championship. He's started that process again with the Chargers. I feel like, he came in, as you say, it was bad times under Brandon Staley. This franchise wasn't feel like it was going anywhere. It didn't feel like it had any impetus. Jim Harbaugh comes in and, you have a great year. It's a fourth place schedule last year, which says a lot. And he only beat one playoff team last year, which was Denver. They beat them twice, which is all well and good. Had a couple of other good wins as well. But, if we're talking about beating teams that went to the playoffs, they only beat the Broncos twice, which, for a fourth place schedule, you might get that because you're playing a lot of bad teams. But that's the fact of the matter. So I would say that it's all set up for success. Like you say, you brought in a better running game. You've tried to make some improvements on the offensive line. You've created a lot of depth, as I mentioned before. I feel like if they could have a similar win total, make the playoffs again, even if they're not winning the division, which I think is more possible than maybe it has been in recent times. Because I think the era of the Chiefs, and this is dangerous to say, the era of the Chiefs doesn't look like it's as set in stone as it was. I'll go so far to say as that.
Oh, be careful what you say there.
Exactly, you've got to be. You do have to be. I'm not going to make any bold proclamations or anything like that, but I do feel like, we talk about the arrows pointing up for certain teams, the arrows pointing down for certain teams, right? I feel like with the Chiefs, it's at least pointing sideways. It's at least like horizontal at the moment. Maybe on a slight downslope, I don't know, but they're coming from a high point. So even if it's coming down a little bit, they're still right up there. So yeah, I feel great about Harbaugh. I feel great about how the roster's being built. I feel pretty good about the direction the franchise is going. It's a tough division, isn't it? As you say, 3 teams made it. The Raiders look like they've made some improvements. Obviously got Pete Carroll now, coach I really like. Gino is a much better quarterback than what they were rolling out last year as well. I know they've obviously got some funny business going on with the Christian Wilkins thing and obviously some other things going on around there, and they're starting from a lower point. But, I feel like, again, if we can have like a similar sort of season, similar sort of win total, get back into the playoffs, as we mentioned before, if we can get a playoff win, the arrow just continues to point up. And then that Harbaugh, what he's done is he's done what he always does. He comes in, sets the floor, and then gives that platform to continually progress, which, if we're looking back at how he's done in the previous stops that he's had, and you kind of see that kind of story unfolding a little bit again in LA, which, hopefully in year 2 will just be, again, that next step again before year 3, again, same sort of thing. So yeah, feel great about Jim, feel great about the direction it's going, and we'll kind of see where we go.
And that is a great segue into our next section, which is our win, loss, or tie segment. So in this section, each fan who comes on predicts their team's overall record by going through each game and answering with a win, loss, or tie answer. Now, Lee, you came on a year ago. As you mentioned earlier, the Chargers went 11-7 in 2024. Do you by chance remember what your prediction was 12 months ago on this show?
I feel like it was 9-8, if I remember right.
It was 7-10.
Oh, was it? Oh, wow. Okay, pretty down on that then.
There's been some that have had it other way around, where they predicted loads of wins and they've had less. But this is one of the first times this year where we've had a season preview where someone predicted something a lot lower than what it was, except for me, the Arsenal Commanders fan.
Okay, yeah, I can understand that one.
Yeah, it's I think that you surprised yourself there with that record, and great first year for Harbaugh. But week 1, you're starting off in Brazil, taking on the Chiefs. Now, first of all, I got to ask: are you at all going to this game?
No, I won't be going to Brazil. No, I'm going on my honeymoon in like 4 weeks' time, so I can't afford to do that. And then Brazil like the week later.
Yeah, that would be. I'm not sure how I'd go with the other half.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Well, first of all, congratulations
on
your wedding. And yeah, it's kind of you want as one Brazil where it's international, but it's almost easier to get to a game in America than it is Brazil. I don't know
Yeah.
how long a flight is to Brazil. Probably looking at what 9 hours, 10 hours of flight to Brazil. I guess
From the UK.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a little bit longer than that. I think it'd be
Oh,
more
really?
like 12. I reckon. Yeah.
I'm gonna Google it because I've never actually looked up
Because
flights.
I know this is getting us like away from football, but I don't think it'd be like a straight line as they draw like a direct as the crow flies. I think it'd go up, down, and then down.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
like a similar way that you fly to the East Coast from the UK. But I might be wrong. I don't know.
So apparently you can get a non-stop flight to Brazil from London.
Yeah.
You can get a one-stop flight from Birmingham, which I'm guessing that maybe arrives at London. You can get a. Oh, that's why. I was thinking it's so cheap. It says here one stop, 38 hours, 35 minutes. That seems like that's a massive.
The players won't be doing that, hopefully.
No. If I go to Sao Paulo from London, let's say so September the 5th, let's say if you went, for example, on the 1st to let's say the Monday, so a week in Brazil. I have applied for creds. Now I don't think I'm going to get them, but
You've got to try these things, though.
Yeah, I mean, if the opportunity comes, I mean,
Absolutely, yeah.
I've got a wedding to go to, but it's only the reception. I'm not invited to the day, so yeah, I kind of don't know what I'll do if I got accepted for this. But it says that you can get a flight, 11 hours and 40 minutes direct,
Okay,
for just under £1,000. So it's expensive, but I think and I think what I would do I would probably go down the route of going to Rio de Janeiro, seeing the Christ Redeemer, and then spending the rest of the time in Sao Paulo. I know friend of the show, Andre Dixon, has gone to Brazil. The only one I think he's the only guest who's been on the show that's been to Brazil for the Brazil game. So it's definitely hard to get to. But in terms of the game, speaking of hard, take on the Chiefs. Lee, win, lose, or tie.
I'm going to go for a loss for this one. A couple of reasons. First of all, it's in Brazil. It's about that length of flight from LA as well. The Chargers do a lot of flying this year, starting off with one of the longest trips they'll do. I think it's a 13-hour flight from LA. That Sao Paulo turf didn't look too handy last year as well. And I know I was talking a minute ago about how the Chiefs are maybe on a bit of a downslope and things like that, but I kind of don't bet against them until we see it. It's one of those things that I kind of just don't do. So yeah, I'm going to go for a loss with that one. It's nice to catch them early. I feel like we do play the Chiefs close as well traditionally, and it is nice to catch them early, while when no one's really got tape on each other, sort of thing. With what you might pull out of the bag for like a 1 week game plan. But yeah, I'm going to predict 2 losses against Chiefs. Spoiler alert. So yeah, we'll go for that L to begin with.
Okay, so week 2, you're going from one of your longest flights of the season to one of your shortest as you travel to Vegas and take on the Raiders.
Yeah, I think it's like a 30-minute flight to Vegas. So yeah, I go for a win in Vegas. As much as, like I said before, they are improved, I do think the Chargers are the superior team, and we'll bounce back from that long trip with the loss against Kansas City to beating the Raiders.
So week 3, you're sticking with the AFC West as you take on at home the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, pretty cool the way that the schedule fell with the 3 divisional games. I really, really like that. I'm going to go for a win for this home opener. Big atmosphere, big crowd off the back of the win. The AFC West is a good division. Sean Payton's a good coach. The Broncos have had a good offseason. But I think if you have aspirations to make the playoffs, these are the sort of games that you need to win at home against a divisional rival.
Do you think this is actually the best division in the league for coaches? You think about as a quartet of coaches, Jim Harbaugh, Pete Carroll, Sean Payton, Andy Reid. I'm actually writing an article on that actually for the Touchdown. I think that's something I feel like I trying to think who else you have. I mean, most divisions. I mean, Aaron Glenn's untested. Mark McDaniel's hit and miss. AFC North. You got Mike Tomlin. You got John Harbaugh. You've got Kevin Stefanski, and you've got
Zach Taylor.
So, yeah, that's not too bad. NFC North has Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, Dan Campbell, and someone who's untested in
It's new guys, isn't it?
Johnson. So I think generally this probably is the best division in the league for coaches, head coaches. I can't think of any other division.
The NFC West would be a shout for me, with obviously McVay, Shanahan, Mike McDonald, and then as much as like it's not maybe the most glamorous, but Jonathan Gannon is showing himself to be a good head coach, and he's got good coordinators and things like that. So as much as, like I say, maybe not the most glamorous, didn't do overly well for the Eagles in terms of being their DC, but I think he's turned into quite a good CEO style head coach. So yeah, the NFC West would also be my shout, I would say.
Well, that is my article for this week. Already decided for the touchdown.
Looking forward to it.
I think I'm going to try and do an article. I think when I rank all 8 divisions from worst to best of quartet of head coaches, and it's probably going to be out by the time this podcast is released. So do go ahead to the touchdown, which Lee you work for,
Absolutely.
help out with. You've been my proofreader at times on articles over the years. So yeah, looking forward to writing that one. And yeah, if you guys want to check it out, head over to the touchdown.co.uk and find my article there.
Absolutely.
Week 4 though is a road game, and you are taking on the New York Giants.
Yeah, this is again another win. It's again the sort of game that you need to win. Cross-country trip, obviously pretty difficult in that regard. It's an early game for the Chargers in terms of like West Coast time, but they're going to be playing Russell Wilson or Jackson Dart, aren't they? So you'd like to think they got the quarterback advantage. As much as the Giants' defense is pretty scary, the offense probably doesn't have the firepower to match. So yeah, it should be a win, I would say.
Well, week 5 is a home game against the Washington Commanders.
I think this is a big litmus test. Obviously, the Commanders up and coming, made the NFC Championship game. Jaden Daniels, year 2, sort of the league by storm, didn't he? I'm going to go for a loss for this one, though. I quite kind of fear this. Jaden Daniels' running ability kind of scares me a little bit. But yeah, it should be a really good game.
Well, week 6 is a road game, and it's on during the London games, and it is a road game against the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, they need to win. If they have playoff aspirations, can't use this as like a bit of a banana skin. I feel like they've had the Dolphins number over the past couple of games, maybe. You might remind me of being a Dolphins fan, but I'm going to go for a win, as much as it'll be a tough game on the road, obviously in Florida. Probably still quite humid at that time of year as well. But yeah, need to win. I mean, I think the Dolphins have had one of the weirder off seasons for me. I don't know how you feel. Maybe a discussion for another day if we're moving on through this. But had a weird off season, I think. And again, I need to see a win from the Chargers if they're going to have playoff aspirations and want to win a playoff game.
Yeah, it's not been an off season to be amazed by. I mean, I don't think as a fan, the most hyped I've been off season might have been that one where we got Terron Armstead and Tyreek Hill within 24 hours. And I do feel like people are going to be giving us a little bit of a discredit because of what's gone on, and people forget we had a great run to end the season, almost made the playoffs, and I do feel like without a fully fit Bradley Chubb, without a fit Jaden Phillips, obviously got Zach Sealer. I'm dreaming that you bring back Christian Wilkins, and Tyreek Hill and Waddle. If they can stay healthy, I think Hill had probably potentially got 1 year left in him, I think, to try and do something.
Sure.
If the O-line could just stay as a unit, stay as that starting 5, Austin Jackson on right tackle, keep him fit, everyone else, I do think, I'm not saying a Super Bowl win or even a deep playoff run, but I think people are thinking we're going to win 7 games or be last. There's one analyst who say we're going to finish bottom of the AFC East, which I think is not true. I don't think we'll be obviously as good as the Bills. I think the Patriots maybe even be higher than us, but I think certainly a team will be in that playoff picture come week 18, week 17.
That'd be a decent season.
Yeah, and if I'm honest, if I can just see us win a game in person in Madrid, that'll be like a Super Bowl for me. I'm 0-7 at games involving the Dolphins, so yeah, I kind of want that to change, and I'm hoping that Madrid is the one. But against Commanders, it's quite a long shot to say that will be where we will outside in that street, but you never know.
Fingers crossed for it, absolutely, yeah.
Well, week 7 is a home game. Your first of 2 straight at home. It is firstly against the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be one of those things where you've got to take advantage of these home games, especially when you're staying at home for a couple of weeks, and obviously the next game's a pretty tough one as well. Again, a team with a bit of a situation at quarterback. Will Anthony Richardson be playing in this game by this point in the season? Who knows? Because obviously he's struggled to stay healthy at times. The Colts, they're a reasonable team, aren't they? But again, it's against an AFC team. You need to kind of be getting these wins in the bank for those tiebreakers. And I think I'll back the Chargers to win this one at home against the Colts.
Well, I've given a lot of times in these season previews off season sort of nickname for certain games like the something bowl. So I'm calling week 8 in this NFL schedule for the Chargers. I'm calling it the 2023 Michigan Wolverines Bowl, as Jim Harbaugh is reunited with his former quarterback in JJ McCarthy as you host the Minnesota Vikings.
Absolutely, yeah. No, they'll be sharing some words and probably a hug before the game, maybe after it as well. This is going to be a tough game, though. Vikings really good team, really, really strong in a lot of facets. I think JJ McCarthy's coming into a really good situation. Offense, really good. Obviously got some superstars on that side of the ball. Offensive line's really good. Obviously got Justin Jefferson to look after, which is tough task for anyone. And then, defensively, they've got a pretty good unit on that side of the ball as well. I'm going to call a loss for this one. But again, a little bit like the Commanders game, I think it'll be a really good game between two really good teams.
Yeah, it could be an offensive shootout. So week 9 is a road game against the first overall pick in Cam Ward and the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, again, it's one of those things, isn't it, where you see the team who was picking first overall last year. You should chalk it up to a win. It's a potential banana skin, though, isn't it? By this time of the year, Cam Ward kind of settled into his rhythm a little bit. But conversely, teams will have tape on him by that point in the season, and they were picking first overall for a reason. They've had an offseason that has grabbed a few headlines in some regards, but they've not made huge improvements. So yeah, I mean, this could be one of those niggly little wins that we grind out in the middle of the season that you do need to win against like a lesser opposition, let's say. So yeah, let's go for a win against the Titans there.
Okay, well, so week 10 is a home game and you're taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, prime time, obviously, as we said earlier at the top of the pod, a good chance for Justin Herbert to show himself in against a tough AFC opponent. Again, a team that we always play tough, always play close against in prime time. However, I just think there's always like losses like this dotted throughout the season. And I just think this is one that the Chargers will drop against the Steelers.
Okay, so then
I think everything but the quarterback is pretty good for the Steelers.
Fair. Well, week 11 is a road game, and you're taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, this is a bounce back week. Dropping that one in prime time won't be high on anyone's list of wants as much as I'm predicting that. Bounce back against the Jags, get the win under the belts, moving into kind of the last quarter of the season, I guess.
Okay, so then week 12 is a bye week. So week 13 is a home game, and it's against the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, this with the sort of latter stages of the games, obviously the next couple of weeks after this are really, really tough. Off the bye, at home, Raiders still pointing to a win, I would say. So, yeah, I'll chalk up that one to a win as well against Las Vegas.
Okay, so then week 14 is a home game against the Super Bowl champions in the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, this is going to be really tough. December, it's going to be cold. The season probably has taken its toll on a lot of teams. These wins against like the Titans that I'm predicting, and maybe the previous week against the Raiders, these when these come in really handy because I'd say this is going to be a loss, and you kind of want a bit of a cushion as you move into the latter stages of the season, looking for playoff seeding and things like that. So yeah, I'm going to say a loss against the Eagles.
Well, week 15 is your first road game since week 11. And whilst in 14 you took on the Super Bowl champions, you're taking on in week 15 the Super Bowl losers in the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, like I say, pretty tough couple of games that pair, isn't it? So yeah, I'm going to chalk up another loss, as I said earlier. I'm not going to predict wins against the Chiefs until I see it. But like I say, I think the record's still in pretty good tact at the minute. And then you've got 3 games that will become pretty important, but also look relatively winnable as well.
Well, week 16 is a road game again, but this time you're taking on the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, by this point, it's again like what shape the Cowboys in. Are they out of the playoff race? Are they in the playoff race? What do they need? Obviously, it's going to be pretty crunch. I would say that the Chargers are in better position than the Cowboys as well, and are in a position where they'll need to snap a 2-game losing streak as well. So yeah, I'm going to predict a win against the Cowboys there.
Okay, so then week 17 is your final home game of the season as you host the Houston Texans.
Yeah, it's going to be billed as like a bit of a revenge game, isn't it? This again could be pretty pivotal for playoff seeding against another AFC team, depending on how their division's going and how the rest of the wider playoff room and race is shaking out. But yeah, I'm going to say they're going to get their revenge on the Texans and maybe lay a marker down for the playoffs if they see them again in what will be 2 or 3 weeks later. So yeah, I'm going to say a win against the Texans there.
Well, week 18 is your final game of the season, the one I'm really looking forward to as a neutral. I'm probably giving away a little bit here as to my predictions for the division in terms of our predictions episode with Steve and Luke we're doing right before the season starts. I think this game will be a game that decides who gets into the playoffs as sort of the second team in that division. I can just see your opponents you're taking on the road, Denver Broncos. I can just see this game being a game where it's deciding whether it's, I don't know, someone gets in as the 7th seed and winner gets in, loser goes home. Or I can see it as a situation where, you're going for, you're both 5th and 6th seed, the winner gets the 5th seed, loser gets the 6th seed. I think this game I don't see this game being a game that's on non-pride. I can see this game maybe being Sunday Night Football, maybe even being one of the Saturday games the day before. I can just see this game having a really real bout of importance on this one, and I think this one could be blockbuster. But for you, Lee, your final game of the season, and for the final time of this episode, win, lose, or tie.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is going to be pivotal. Obviously, a big divisional game, week 18. There's probably going to be playoff aspirations on the line for one or both teams. I think it would be a coin toss, if I'm honest. I'd like to think that it won't be the same old Chargers that kind of mess it up at the end of the season. So I'm going to go for a win, considering that, I did add in a banana skin earlier on in the season that we maybe trip over, but maybe we kind of get one of those big games and kind of like maybe a pre-playoff game, kind of, in terms of the win or go home kind of format this might take on, depending on how things shake out, in the wider divisional race. So yeah, I'm going to say win against the Broncos. Keep that run going against them.
Well, that means that you will, based on your predictions, finish with 11-6, which is, unless you're extremely unlucky, more than enough to get you in the playoffs. So with that record, and you get into the playoffs, how far will the Chargers go in the postseason, Lee?
I think I'd like to, we talked about it earlier, we kind of touched upon it. You got to get that monkey off your back and win that playoff game. I think, as long as they get that playoff win and it's not a complete disaster, you're kind of thinking, that's progress. And then maybe this is, it's looking 12 months ahead, but, you're looking at going into the 2026 season with a whole host of cap space, more draft picks, another year in the system, because I don't see, obviously Harbaugh's not going to move on, Greg Roman's not going to move on. Depending on how the defensive does, Jesse Minter might move on, might get a head coaching job, who knows. But, you're looking for that continuity again, you're looking into that. And I suppose as long as, like I say, get that playoff win, you're looking to just carry on with that upward trajectory. So yeah, let's say they get a playoff win, like say finish 11-6 and get that just one playoff win, and then probably bow out to a probably more battle-hardened playoff team, someone like the Bills or something like that, who we'll have to go there as a non-divisional winner, I'm going to say, probably at 11-6. And then, you can maybe bow out there, but with like hope in your heart that, next year can be the real push. So yeah, we'll go for that. We'll kind of temper expectations a little bit.
Well, if that is the case and you take on the Bills in the divisional round, you could be the team that plays in the last ever game at Highmark Stadium, because if the Bills
that could be true, yeah.
They could be still on the road in the AFC Championship game. So yeah, you could be. Someone will have that luxury. Someone will have that luxury of being a final team. I know we talked about it in the Bills episode about how they're dreaming of the final game being playing the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game at Highmark and winning. But you never know. With their recent playoff record, they could easily go out in the same round, and they could beat you beat you guys in the divisional round. I think someone's going to have that luxury of being the final team. The first team playing was apparently the Jets, according to David. Or was it the Jets? I think it was the Jets. And yeah, I don't think the Jets will be in the playoffs at all. But yeah, you may have that luxury.
Potentially, yeah, it'd be a good game. Be a good game to see the Chargers against, like I say, a real battle-hardened playoff team, Super Bowl team, to kind of see where they measure up. Because as much as obviously they lost that game against Texans last year, I don't think the Texans are in that bracket. They're in probably a similar bracket to us. So you want to kind of see yourself measured up against the best before you go into, like I say, 2026. I think is the year where they'll really push the chips in the middle of the table and kind of try and make that run and really establish. Looking to win the division probably in 2026, things like that. So, yeah, we'll kind of see. Hopefully, another staging post before we kind of make that big run.
I can't imagine a harder place to go than Highmark
Exactly.
Stadium. With Bills Mafia being underdogs anyway on paper and having to play in their final home game.
That'd be hyped.
There's not. I don't think there's many tougher places to go with like in that situation. That's brutal. But let's head to our final segment, which will be Fan Asks Fan. So for those who aren't familiar with our new segment on the podcast, each guest who come on will ask the next guest a question, whilst also answering a question from the previous guest in our last team season preview episode. So our last team season preview was the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this was with both Freddies and Freddie Hall and Freddie Harper-Davis. And Freddie Harper-Davis asked a question to you, Lee. What would be the craziest NFL story that will take place throughout the season?
Craziest NFL story that will be taking place in the season? That's a good question. That's a really good question.
For him, he said the biggest in-season bombshell.
Bombshell. Okay. It's really put me on the spot. I'm thinking something to do with the Cleveland QB situation. Let's say Dylan Gabriel kind of wins that job and plays more than 50% of the games for the Browns.
Joe, I love that because I was talking about it. I believe it was in the Ravens season preview. We were previewing their game. I believe it was in week 11 or week 13. I was saying like I could see Gabriel or Sanders playing in that game because I think Joe Flacco is, I think, the easy choice, the number one quarterback at the moment. But he is at a certain age and he can't keep playing to that level to for someone his age. Kenny Pickett has proved to be not a starter in the NFL. So you get to like say weeks 4 or 5, Flacco gets injured or Flacco is struggling. They bring Pickett in, and he's no good after a couple of weeks. They get to a point where they'll get to a point where they're on 2 or 3 wins by week 9 or 8. They're going to roll the dice. Stefanski will roll the dice and just give either Gabriel or Sanders a chance. So I definitely think it's feasible to see them starting at least one game, either of them, and certainly I think by the time we get to either week 12 or week 14, I can see the Browns starting one of those 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, to make it a big bombshell, let's say Dylan Gabriel plays 8 or more games for the Browns, then that would make it a bit bigger than just maybe 1 or 2.
Okay, I like that. Well, Lee, it's time for you to ask our next team season preview guest a question.
Can I know who the episode is going to be?
You cannot.
Okay, right. I've got to think of something. Who is going to be the day 3 rookie on your team who is going to make the biggest splash?
Oh, interesting. Now I'm going to quickly get my guide. Now I've got the team planned, but it's whether they'll bail. I don't want to say something could happen that could mean they don't make the episode. But this thing, I'm going to get this team out. I don't know whether my thing isn't telling me. Thankfully, isn't showing on the screen. So basically, that would be rounds 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah. Let's say that. Yeah.
It's a shame it's not the Browns because that would have been.
That would have kind of. Well, to be fair, it probably kill my question a little bit.
Well, this team has 4 day 3 players, 2 6-rounders, 2 7-rounders. So,
okay,
if this team goes ahead, then I'm intrigued who they're going to say because they're all in different positions. So, yeah.
Okay,
that'll be interesting to see what they do. But in the meantime, this is where we end today's episode. So, Lee, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having us, mate. Yeah, it's been really good to chat to you. Keep continuing doing your great work with the series. Really enjoyed it so far. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much. And we'll be obviously playing the Chargers in the season, so you'll be hearing Lee's voice, I'm sure, either to preview the game or review the game during the season. But this has been the Across the Pod NFL Podcast 2025 Los Angeles Chargers season preview. I've been, as ever, your host today, Andy Davis, with our guest today in Chargers fan Lee Wakefield, and we'll see you guys next time.